Welcome to the Still Curtain podcast, powered by FanSided and StillCurtain.com. It is Monday, November 24th, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are 6-5 after a 31-28 loss to the Chicago Bears in Week 12 at Soldier Field. I'm Josh Yourish, and today we're going to hop in the time machine for an Omar Khan offseason do-over, because I think there are maybe a few moves that he might want to have back. Make the case for why Mike Tomlin could be the Steelers' biggest offensive problem. But before all of that, Tomlin's defense is kind of back to its old ways, but they're also new ways, and they're just the same old struggles. It's lipstick on a pig, the changes that the Steelers have made, because this defense is just not good enough. And I think on the instant reaction show, first watch of this game, you see a lot more single high, and the instinct is, okay, Tomlin and the Steelers are back to a little too much cover one man or cover three spot drop that they love to do and got cooked in the quick game with, and Caleb Williams is cooking them in the quick game again. You look at the numbers coming out of it, and you watch it again. There was still some cover two, cover four stuff. Like, there was a lot of zone. They didn't go back to the man coverage stuff that wasn't working. They used a lot more of the split field safety than it felt like on first watch, and that didn't work either. And the Steelers played too much base personnel and too many big bodies on the field against an explosive passing attack. They stopped the run fairly well because of it. But you look at, through the season, it's not just that they play more base than anyone, because they're around league average at base personnel. They play nickel about league average, right? Even a little bit above. They don't play very much dime. But the Bears weren't really daring them to, because a lot of the stuff they were getting to was out of 11 and 12 personnel. And I just want to Mike Tomlin was thoroughly outclassed in this game, is what it looked like. This is a defense that lacks talent, and we're going to get into that with like some of Omar Khan's decisions in the offseason and in the season. But a lot of it was just like Tomlin completely overmatched no matter what he threw at Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson. And Ben Johnson is one of the best play callers in the NFL. But if you're a defensive-minded coach with this much defensive, I say talent's an issue, but this much defensive investment, you should be able to get something, have some kind of punch, have some kind of answer. And the Steelers just never did. Like, Caleb Williams, this was a close game, Steelers had a chance to win it at the end, and it's going to look, as we get further away from it, like, oh, that was really a blown opportunity. The Steelers, in my opinion, they were completely outclassed in this game. I won't say like totally on both sides of the ball. The Bears could have had a whole lot more if Caleb Williams was able to put any modicum of touch on a deep intermediate throw. Like, there were multiple dagger routes that he missed that were wide open, and there are other throws that he missed as well. He had a good game, a responsible game mostly, other than the strip sack for the touchdown. But it wasn't like he was just dotting them up all over the place. It was a defense that was leaving guys wide open left and right. And Ben Johnson did a great job getting the Steelers in conflict and out leveraging them. And I think one play maybe describes this or defines it better than any other. I have two examples, but the one that jumps to mind, DJ Moore's second touchdown on the free play, right? It gets kind of lost a little bit, I think, because it was a free play, and it's like, oh, that was just kind of wonky. He came wide open. The Steelers play on that play. The Steelers play spot drop cover 3 against trips to the field. It's 11 personnel, but with the tight end as the backside X. So it's playing a bit more like a 4 receiver set. The Steelers match with nickel, so at least they're not in base and like totally out leverage that way. But the spot drop cover 3 obviously has 3 deep players, and the Bears just run 4 verts into it. and you're completely out leveraged with the trips to the field. They run 4 verts into it, and Jalen Ramsey has to take a choice between Odunze running like kind of a bender from he was the closest receiver to the formation in the slot, or more just running up that seam. And yes, Brandon Eccles probably needs to turn and run with Odunze, but that's not what spot drop cover 3 really is. Like, they're dropping to a spot. That's the defense and the way the Steelers run it. They don't run man match or pattern match or different types of zones. They primarily live in this kind of spot drop world, which is pretty outdated as far as the NFL goes. And Ben Johnson just completely took advantage of it with his formations, with his personnel groupings, how he's deploying them. And that play was just like such an easy touchdown because the Steelers don't adjust pre-snap. Like, you should know whoever, whether it's Patrick Queen or if it's Jalen Ramsey who has that call because he has the view from the back, but you see that they're in trips the way they are. There is the threat that they get four players running down the field, like four verts stressing those 3 defenders, and you don't have enough to defend them. Like, you got to be able to shift the coverage to that side of the field, whether that's cover 6, whether that's bailing out completely and changing the play at pre-snap. But you're going to be out leveraged, and there's just no answer for it before the play. Like, the Steelers were outmatched on the chalkboard in a lot of ways, but also on the field, like, whoever's getting those calls and making those adjustments, that should be something that you just automatically adjust to a coverage that's going to make sense. And they didn't, and just got completely outmatched by it. There were so many of those situations throughout the game all day. A lot of it on second watch is the Bears and Ben Johnson did a great job stressing the second level defenders of the Steelers. Like, the linebackers were constantly in conflict of, do I play the run here? And this is not new for that style of offense that is a lot of under center outside zone run and play action off of it. You're trying to stress the linebackers unless you're the Steelers. You're trying to stress the linebackers and make them make that choice between playing the run or dropping to the hashes and covering that middle of the field. And there's very little way for them to get enough depth on their drop. So that's why you saw, and Williams missed a couple of these throws, but those daggers, those slants across the middle, like deep overs, those types of routes working so well against the Steelers. Like, Ben Johnson, he's an amazing coach. It was an unbelievably called game by him, but that the Steelers had no answers for it at all, and that Mike Tomlin was so outclassed, that's concerning. Like, it has to be concerning. And for me to say, oh, it's concerning for a guy who I've said needs to be fired all year. Okay, yeah, like, there are a lot of concerning things, but the Steelers seem to be trending in the right direction on the defensive side of the ball in recent weeks. And this week, that all of that just went out the window. Not even in terms of, like, schematically they abandoned it, because they were a heavy zone team. They played more cover 2, cover 4, like maybe not as much as they had or did last week against the Bengals, but a fair amount of it. It wasn't like they were just living cover 1 man like they were early in the season. And yet they were completely unable to stop this offense, which since week 3 has been one of the best in the NFL. But that's come against a lot of subpar competition. Like, this is not a Bears team that seems to be like a total juggernaut on that side of the ball. Now, I think Ben Johnson is going to be in the Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay class of, no matter what ingredients you give him, he's going to cook up a really, really good offense with it. And Caleb Williams is certainly above whatever that JJ McCarthy bar is of, okay, now Kevin O'Connell actually can't make it work. So it's a really good offense, but again, it's just, there's so many ways that Johnson felt like he knew how to out leverage the Steelers. That play was one of them. This is another, like, really good example that I thought was super interesting and has more to do with personnel groupings, right? Because the Steelers in this game lived mostly as like a base 4-3 team instead of a 3-4. You could call it a 2-5. Because if you want to count TJ Watt and Nick Herbig as actual linebackers, they are outside linebackers in their 3-4 defense. In this one, they were primarily living with the 4 down linemen, and then they were playing a lot with Patrick Queen, Malik Harrison, and Peyton Wilson all on the field at the third level. And they're doing that to try to get numbers to the run game and numbers to this outside zone game. They didn't want to have to rely on Brandon Eccles and Joey Porter Jr. and James Pierre to fit the run. And I was really concerned about that coming in because the Bears and Ben Johnson can do a really good job of going to 11 personnel, getting condensed, and then making your corners tackle in the run game. That's why they've been so successful in outside zone. One of the best outside zone teams in the league this year, even with running backs that, aren't some of the most talented in football. It's a lot of schematic stuff like that. And I was really worried about it coming off of last week when we saw some of those issues crop up against the Bengals, though the strategy of having Jalen Ramsey off the line of scrimmage and things like that seemed to really work. You just have less tacklers in the secondary. And if those bodies are going to be around the line of scrimmage, you're going to have some issues. So instead of playing that way, Mike Tomlin goes, I'm going to get 3 inside linebackers out there on the field and have Peyton Wilson kind of play this will position. And it didn't work at all because what you're sacrificing there, like what you're sacrificing explosive passes for the sake of stopping an extra half yard to yard per carry against the run. Like maybe there are some more explosives that come in the run game if you do play lighter to this offense, but you still should have taken that risk because what the Bears were getting in the passing game was absolutely killing the Steelers. So another great example of this kind of play, the Steelers were primarily matching 12 personnel, 2 tight ends, 1 running back, 2 tight ends with base, and that kind of 2-5 base in this game. The Steelers, and again, they're not playing it at base at like an astronomical number. So it's not like, oh, he's just living in base and getting cooked in it. Like their 13th highest base usage, 14th highest nickel usage, right about league average for both. So coming into week 11. So not like a massive problem there, but it's that teams know how to out leverage you when you do respond how you typically do. And the Steelers don't have answers for that type of stuff. So we saw on this specific play, we saw why that I'm going to describe. We saw why the Bears drafted Colston Loveland so high. And it's not because he killed the Steelers or anything like that, but because with him and Kmet, they can now go into 12 personnel and be very versatile in it. So they went 12, but they went empty, and they caught the Steelers with Nick Herbig trying to jam Rome Odunze in the slot. So on that play, it was a big first down completion over the middle, a slant play from Williams to Odunze that he had a big catch and run. It was right near midfield. The Bears went empty from that 12 personnel and split the running back out to the right, had 2 tight ends inside of him in the slot, operating, functionally as receivers, Kmet and Loveland, and then 2 receivers on the backside, Odunze and Moore. And it forced the Steelers with so many big bodies on the field, matching with base, their 5 linebacker look. It makes Herbig and Watt split out as like kind of apex defenders, right? With the middle of the field wide open. So Williams knows he'll have a ton of room to work the slant, and he knows that Herbig is the one responsible for Odunze. And Watt was split out on Loveland on the other side, and that's a problem mismatch too, but Williams decided, I'll take Odunze on the outside linebacker instead of my tight end on the outside linebacker. Either way, he probably could have had a completion. Like it's not just one issue. It's not cover 3. It's not cover 1. It's not man zone. It's that Mike Tomlin continually, no matter what he kind of goes to, and it's also a personnel problem, but he just continually looks outclassed, right? Like if you're ending up in a situation where the opposing offensive coordinator knows he can get both your outside linebackers, your best pass rushers, not only like have them in coverage on that play and have one-on-ones to work with the middle of the field open, but know that they're now not going to be rushing the passer. So it was just problems all day in this one. And Steelers Almighty in the chat, thanks for hopping in the chat. And if you have anything in the chat, questions, comments, throw it in there. We love interacting. in the chat throughout this show. If Caleb Williams is accurate at all, they put up 50 and he is well over 300 yards. Yeah. Like, if this is a Ben Johnson, Jared Goff offense, like everyone else but Jared Goff in there for Williams, because he's going to hit those daggers. He's going to hit those benders. He's not going to miss that drag route to Luther Burden that could have been huge catch and run. Like, there were a ton of misses for Caleb Williams. If it's Goff, it's 50 plus in this one. Like, they had whatever they wanted. It's a defense that lacks talent in important positions, which is a problem on the most expensive unit in the NFL, far and away. But it's a poorly coached defense that constantly gets outmaneuvered pre-snap and on the chalkboard. And it's why the Steelers entered the week allowing the second highest first read throw rate per FTN fantasy in the NFL. Because teams know our quarterback's not going to have to sit back here and read it out. We know how to get the matchup we want and have it come open early and just get the ball out of their hands. So Herbig and Watt and, Hayward, Benton, Harmon, everyone up front can't really do anything about it. And Williams really wasn't pressured much in this game. He got the ball out of his hands really quickly. Caleb Williams got the ball out of his hands really quickly. And that's a credit to, Ben Johnson coaching up Williams and his development. And even though it was kind of an ugly game in terms of his downfield accuracy, responsibility and decision-making other than the big strip sack for a touchdown. But on dropbacks, this is Caleb Williams with the longest time to throw in football coming into this week. He went 12 for 17 on dropbacks under 2.5 seconds for 161 yards and 2 touchdowns with a 139.6 passer rating. Despite misses. Like, it could have been way worse. And it's just another reason that Mike Tomlin should not be the coach of this football team. And we might need to ask some real questions about the decision makers putting together this football team. Because I've been pretty pro Omar Khan. I think he's modernized a lot of the ways that the Steelers handle contracts, handle free agency, manipulate the comp pick formula. He's done a lot of good stuff there, been more aggressive with trades. But for this defense to have this many issues, it's not just coaching. Like, it is coaching a lot, but it's not just coaching. Like, they don't have the bodies in the secondary and at linebacker to do a lot of the things they want to do, because as I ran through it, Steelers start the season, they want to be a high blitz rate, man coverage, cover one team. They think they have the corners to do it. They don't. And the Bengals ultimately put the nail in that coffin with Jamar Chase's huge game. Darius Slay and Jalen Ramsey aren't so good in man coverage anymore. Juan Thornhill is a nightmare as a post safety. Like, he's not athletic enough to play single high like that. And so you adapt. You move Jalen Ramsey to safety, you out of the nickel, and you become kind of this cover 2, cover 4, more zone heavy team that doesn't blitz as much. And then you get exposed there as well. So, I mean, there are other options. It's not like all of the options are expended now and Tomlin has no possible adjustments, but he's tried some different stuff. Like, him and Terrell Austin, while I think are doing a very bad job this year, they've tried different stuff and they still can't figure this defense out. And eventually that becomes, okay, it's also a big talent issue. And that's going to fall. I mean, it falls on Mike Tomlin, who's the most powerful voice in this franchise, but it also is worth evaluating a lot of the decisions that Omar Khan has made. And that's what we're going to do at the end of the show. Before that, we're going to hop into the offense and a trend that reappeared with another different quarterback. I guess it's another same different quarterback, like we've had him before. But it's a problem that, in my opinion, is Mike Tomlin's creation. So before we hop into that, though, if you're a fan of Pittsburgh Steelers football, please consider subscribing to the Steel Curtain podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. We really appreciate your support. We also really appreciate your support on stillcurtain.com. Go check out the website. So much, if you like the audio content, audio video content that we have for you on the YouTube and everywhere else, you'll love the written content that Tommy Jagai, Shane Kubis, and the entire amazing team at stillcurtain.com does. Also some stuff on fansided.com. So check out some fansided.com stuff. Mark Powell has been writing a lot about the Steelers, who obviously was on with me for the instant reaction show yesterday and throughout the entire season. To this offensive issue, the Steelers haven't had a good offense in years. Part of that is the Steelers haven't had a good quarterback in years. Like, that's kind of a chicken and egg thing a little bit. But there's one specific thing that I want to nail down on that, in my opinion, is Mike Tomlin's doing. And yesterday, Mason Rudolph, who, okay, we've been through all these different quarterbacks. Now Rudolph is back after, saving Christmas a couple of years ago and getting the Steelers to the playoffs. He attempted one pass to the intermediate middle of the field. Well, one pass over 10 yards downfield and between the numbers. So his one completion in that qualification was to the intermediate middle, so between 10 and 19 yards downfield. But there were also no throws 20 or more yards downfield in between the numbers. Every deep shot was down the sidelines, and there was just nothing in that middle part of the field, which is everything the Bears did. Right? Everything I just said about how Ben Johnson put the linebackers of the Steelers in massive conflict and just created so much space in the middle, especially when the Steelers are playing middle of the field open coverages, cover 2, cover 4, or middle of the field close, cover 1, cover 3. Either way, they're just able to manipulate those linebackers to get in behind them, create explosives. And that's how you create explosive plays, is that middle part of the field. You don't do it by winning jump balls down the sideline like the Steelers so stubbornly want to do. How you create explosives is you get your fast players, DK Metcalf, you give them a runway, hit them over the middle, and let them catch and run. Like, that is where most explosive passing plays in the NFL come from, those types of designs. And Arthur Smith knows this because he was one of the best in the NFL doing it in Tennessee with A.J. Brown, a wide receiver very similar to DK Metcalf. And A.J. Brown is a much better man-to-man, like, jump ball winner. Like, he is kind of what a lot of people think DK Metcalf should be. But still similar styles in that they're big, fast receivers who need that runway over the middle of the field. If you hit them there, you can get a ton of explosives. And yet Mason Rudolph, who is willing to stand in the pocket, was not so pressure sensitive as Aaron Rodgers has been in the recent weeks, where he has to get the ball out of his hands quickly. And a lot of those throws are to the perimeter or just like short drag routes, things like that. Rudolph was standing in there. There was just nothing over the middle of the field by design. And so is that an Arthur Smith thing? Well, that's been a thing for the Steelers before Arthur Smith got here. And we know Arthur Smith loves to attack that part of or at least loved to attack that part of the field in previous iterations of his offense, other places that he's been. So Justin Fields was not a great middle of the field thrower. He never has been, never will be. Russell Wilson never has been, never will be. Size limitations there. Fields doesn't have those same size limitations. He just doesn't read it, see it well, doesn't like putting the ball into that danger zone, because while it is the most fertile grounds for explosive plays, it is also a pretty high risk area, because there are going to be some turnovers, tips, overthrows. There's just a lot of bodies in the middle of the field. So if you can't create so much space, like, there's a chance of turnovers. And we know Mike Tomlin is so deathly afraid of turnovers. Kenny Pickett, was he a good over the middle of the field thrower? There were like some flashes, glimpses of that, of him like actually kind of standing in. But like he didn't do anything, didn't and doesn't do anything at an NFL level. So no. Matt Canada, when he was the offensive coordinator, was running like high school passing concepts. But it was a problem for Big Ben and Randy Fichtner. They didn't attack the middle of the field at the end of Ben's tenure. And okay, Ben doesn't want to get hit, doesn't have the same arm, wants to get it out quickly to the perimeter. But like, where you can have an explanation for each of these guys, each of these cases. But the through line through all of them is that Mike Tomlin is the head coach. So now it's Arthur Smith and Aaron Rodgers and Mason Rudolph, and they're still staying away from the most high risk but high reward part of the field. And to me, that's Mike Tomlin once again living in his fears. Like at this point, it's so hard to make a case that Tomlin isn't the one dictating that his offense should steer clear of throws between the numbers. Justin Fields' first start against the Falcons last year, you may remember the discourse and Steelers fans saying, this isn't a problem. They won. Why would you throw to the middle of the field? They have Jesse Bates, as if Jesse Bates is suddenly Ed Reed. Very good safety, but not somebody you should never test. And ideally, a lot of those throws, you're displacing safeties or holding them, and you're not just going like one-on-one over a middle of the field safety. It's a Tomlin problem. It's another reason that he needs to go. And more importantly, it's another reason why he cannot be allowed to draft and develop the next young quarterback. Because if you're taking away that part of the field from that player, unless they're Michael Penix, who didn't want to throw there to begin with, didn't in college and hasn't in the pros, and we've seen how that's worked out for him, it's going to be a recipe for disaster. You have to attack that part of the field. I mean, it can't be exclusively what you do, but there are multiple mock drafts that you see of like, oh, the Steelers need a quarterback. Maybe they can get Ty Simpson from Alabama. Maybe they can get Dante Moore from Oregon. So some of the things those guys do best is attacking the middle of the field. Ty Simpson does it relentlessly. He's so good at it. He throws with great anticipation. He stands in under pressure. Like, I love the way he attacks the middle of the field. If he becomes a Steelers quarterback, I have no faith that that'll be a part of the game plan whatsoever. This isn't just looking at the throw chart, the spray chart of throws where that part of the field is completely vacated. It's also the route tree that you see when you watch these games on film or you see the next gen stats charts. Like, all the routes are to the perimeter. Everything is to the perimeter with an offense that's built to attack the middle of the field. Arthur Smith and Ryan Tannehill feasted there when they were in Tennessee. That's where DK Metcalf has created most of the explosive plays throughout his career. This team has 4 tight ends that play meaningful snaps, 3 that are real huge contributors, yet it doesn't attack the middle of the field. Arthur Smith's route tree right now and route concepts, it's limited and it limits the passing offense. There wasn't much available downfield yesterday, like watching it on the film. That's a problem. I think it's a little bit of an Arthur Smith thing because he's never been the most complex passing game designer in the history of the NFL. Like, that's never been his thing. He's a run game guy. But his thing has been outside zone. And where can you attack off play action when you're running that type of attack? It's the middle of the field. You're stressing the perimeter. You're making outside linebacker or inside linebackers make a decision. They have to come downhill. They have to play sideline to sideline, right? You're influencing their eyes. You're holding them so you can hit throws behind them. That's the entire premise of the offense Arthur Smith has run for his entire career. And suddenly, the most important part of that is taken away from him. And you see the results. It's a passing offense that can't do anything. Would it be better with the number 2 wide receiver? I don't think so. Like, would this Steelers offense be better with a number 2 wide receiver? Yes. Would it fix any of these problems, most of them coming from Tomlin? No. How could it? If that number 2 wide receiver is also not allowed to run routes to the middle of the field, and a number 2 wide receiver in an Arthur Smith offense isn't going to get that many touches. That's an Arthur Smith thing separate of Tomlin, but it's also now even exacerbated because you're taking away the most profitable throws in that offense. There are other issues with the Steelers offensively, and you can point to Arthur Smith for them. The run game tends to fade in the second half of games. We've seen that multiple times. Some of that's a Rodgers thing, just getting out of those calls. Some of that is teams selling out. Like, I think the Bears really sold out for the run in the second half yesterday. There are also issues like leaving Darnell Washington one-on-one with Montez Sweat. Like, that's not a Tomlin thing. But you can overlook those issues a lot more if you're hitting some explosives to the middle of the field, or at least taking chances and throwing the ball there. Like, I would overlook it a lot more if you were trying to do those things that are going to give you a chance to hit big plays. Because you know what's not? Deep balls down the sideline when your wide receivers are DK Metcalf, who, while we think of him as that 50-50 ball winner, has never been that throughout his career. And then Roman Wilson, who's what, 5'10", and Calvin Austin, who's my size. And if you don't know, I'm not that big. Like, you're just not going to win that way. And I'm sick of this being we shuffle the deck chairs on the Titanic every year and run it back, and the same problems exist on both sides of the ball, largely because of Mike Tomlin. And okay, like Tomlin made some better decisions fourth down in this game. While he ended up getting the ball back, like the Steelers offense ended up getting the ball back, I hate the punt at the end of that game. I don't think the offense was going to do anything either way, but I would have left the offense out there. Again, it worked out for him, but that doesn't mean it's the right decision. It was the right process. I It's just pretty infuriating year after year that you see these same issues. And okay, we got to get Matt Canada out of here. We got to get a new quarterback. Got to get rid of Russell Wilson. And you do. Like, you got to get rid of Matt Canada. Like, yes, correct. You got to get rid of Matt Canada. You got to get rid of Kenny Pickett. You got to get rid of Russell Wilson. Like, yes. But nothing really changes when you do. George Pickens was a receiver that primarily was a perimeter guy. Was that because that's his skill set, or that's how he's being used in this offense? Well, I think we're seeing the way he dominated the Eagles and has been one of the best receivers in the NFL this year. It was just the way he was being used. Like, he can absolutely feast over the middle of the field. He's great yards after catch if you give him that runway. I don't think he would have been that here. I know he wouldn't have been that here. And we can talk about that a little bit more. It's and how many years we have in the chat, how many years is idiot Art going to give mediocre Mike to build an offense? Pathetic. To me, like, I don't put much of this on Arthur Smith at all. There are issues with this offense. I think it's absolutely, like, in its current form, it's well designed enough to be a passable NFL offense, and largely has been a passable NFL offense. But because of the limitations that Tomlin imposes on his offense, on his play callers, on his quarterbacks, I just don't think, even if you have a better offensive coordinator come in, you're going to have the same issues. And as Steelers Freak 1964 says in the chat, unless they get rid of Tomlin and get a stud OC, I wouldn't draft a quarterback. The current staff can't develop a QB. It will waste another 3 to 4 years. Completely agree. The problem is, the thing this franchise needs more than anything, more desperately than anything, is a young franchise quarterback. Because there just aren't quarterbacks out there, as we've learned, wandering this wilderness since Ben Roethlisberger. There's not a lot of good quarterbacks that are available. You know, maybe Daniel Jones should have been the guy that the Steelers went after. Again, I don't think he'd be playing the way he is, and not a great second half against the Chiefs yesterday, but I don't think he'd be playing the way he is in Indianapolis with the Steelers, because they don't throw the ball as aggressively as the Colts do. Like, the way you develop quarterbacks is to throw early and often, because you're letting them, and this is what the Colts have done with Daniel Jones in a lot of ways this year. You don't develop a quarterback by leaning super heavily on the run game on early downs and only letting him throw on third down, because you're forcing him into obvious passing situations when the defense can cook up their most exotic blitz pressure, when they can use post-snap safety rotations and disguises, and they can pull out all those tricks. If you're throwing in neutral situations, it's going to give you the best chance to succeed. And that's what Daniel Jones has figured out and has found with Shane Steichen in Indianapolis. And the Steelers, when they had Kenny Pickett trying to develop, we're a run pass offense, and that's just never going to work. And some of that, again, that was, Matt Canada, but also with Arthur Smith. Like, there are issues that are uniquely Arthur Smith's. But to me, it all comes down to Mike Tomlin and the way he wants a football team to exist. Like it's still 2010. And I'm I'm so done with it. This is just another reason why the lack of aggressiveness to the middle of the field offensively. We've blamed every quarterback that's come through. We've blamed every offensive coordinator that's come through. To me, it's a Mike Tomlin thing. And a lot of the issues, even in personnel, are also a Mike Tomlin thing. And that's where we're going to go next. Like, if the Steelers could have an offseason do-over, I think they'd probably take it. I have been pretty positive about Omar Khan. And again, a lot of that is modernization of the way Steelers approach contract situations and, guaranteeing years beyond the first or money beyond the first year and different ways that they've just brought it into the 21st century. And I think Khan is a huge piece of that. He's the money guy. I think he does a really good job in terms of manipulating comp pick formulas, and I think he's a good drafter for the most part as well. I tend to ascribe a lot of the franchise issues to Mike Tomlin, and I think rightfully so. But I did kind of have a moment yesterday, coming off the instant reaction show of like, is this roster any good? Because Khan has had quite a few years now post Kevin Colbert to build it up. It's looking like there are a lot of misses. And we can go back to Broderick Jones looks like a miss. Troy Fautanu is starting to look like an absolute hit. Like he's definitely the Steelers' long-term right tackle. I thought he played really well yesterday. Montez Sweat had a huge game. That was pretty much all against Darnell Washington, which again, you can put that on Arthur Smith if you want to. But you really tried to address this offensive line. I still think it's not a very good offensive line. And again, I like Fautanu, I like McCormick, I like Frazier. So there's a foundation there, but it's not a good run blocking offensive line. Is that Pat Meyer, the offensive line coach? Probably a little bit. But also, okay, Omar Khan, like your first round pick, big miss. But if we just zero in on this offseason, because it was a pretty transformative one, trade for DK Metcalf. Of the available options to get a high volume target wide receiver one, like functionality wide receiver one, if we're arguing like what is a wide receiver one, there are a lot of definitions. If that is one of the 32 best wide receivers in the NFL, in that, the best wide receiver on a team is a wide receiver one, Metcalf definitely clears that bar. Is he the type of wide receiver one that I think you can build an entire passing game around, because all the different things he's able to do as a deep threat, as an underneath guy, you can just force feed targets because they're going to catch everything. They're that reliable and field tilting of a force. Metcalf's definitely been field tilting, but that's more of a product of the lack of targets everywhere else. Because defenses have shaded his way and given cloud coverages and brackets and everything you could possibly throw at him. For the compensation that the Steelers gave up, a day 2 pick for Metcalf with that contract, it's not looking great. Of the options that they had to get a wide receiver that was actually moved, probably the best they were going to be able to do, unless you're swinging like a massive deal. And I don't think they were in any position to do that, giving up first round picks or anything like that. And with the knowledge that you have to get George Pickens off of this team, trading George Pickens is obviously the next thing. You trade him to Dallas for a 3rd round pick. It looks really bad right now. I mean, George Pickens currently has more receiving yards than all of the Steelers wide receivers combined. That's bad. That's about as bad could be. Was he going to do that in Pittsburgh with Aaron Rodgers or any quarterback that the Steelers had? No. I have absolutely no belief that that would have happened in any respect in Pittsburgh. I think the way he was toxic on the sidelines and in the locker room, and just a wildly frustrating player to have on the roster, giving little to no effort against the Bengals in the final game of the regular season. Against the Cowboys last year, he was loafing. That was early in the year before all was lost. You had to move on from George Pickens. I really believe that you did. And in a lot of ways, that's another indictment of Mike Tomlin, because Brian Schottenheimer now is getting him to mostly be a good soldier, at least be a great player, with a really good quarterback and CeeDee Lamb and a wide open offense. He's dominating, but that doesn't make that decision like the wrong decision to move on from George Pickens. I think it was the absolute right decision. I don't think anyone else would have given up more than the Cowboys did to get him. You were in a tough situation because you were struggling to keep this receiver happy, and so you sold pretty low on him. I still don't think that's wrong, but it is, the Steelers definitely did downgrade at wide receiver. If you're just looking player to player, guy to guy, DK versus Pickens, Pickens is clearly the better wide receiver. Okay, then you look at trading Minkah Fitzpatrick for Jalen Ramsey. Minkah is now playing all over the field again in Miami. He's playing in the slot a ton. He looks fairly rejuvenated on a really, really bad defense. And Jalen Ramsey is now just a full-time safety. That's certainly not what you traded for Jalen Ramsey for. Like, the reason that trade was made was because Tomlin and this coaching staff wanted to be a man coverage heavy, blitz heavy team. That was wrong. Like, they misevaluated what Ramsey had left in that capacity. I still think Ramsey is pretty good in the nickel as an outside corner. I think was fairly routinely getting cooked early in the season and would not rely on him there. I think, safety is maybe like nickel's his best position. Safety was always his ultimate destiny, but right now he's not as versatile of a player as Minkah Fitzpatrick is proving to be in Miami, and probably not as good of a safety if that's what you were going to have him be, because Minkah Fitzpatrick was starting to struggle. He was not creating turnovers and everything, but he was stuck as just a post safety. And now that's what Ramsey mostly is. You probably were better off just sticking with Minkah in that scenario. Like, I don't know if Omar Khan could have a do-over on that one. It's a tough call. But it doesn't look like it's, working out it certainly hasn't worked out in the way they thought it would. So do you mark that as a miss? If we're grading pass fail, that's a tough one. But it doesn't look like this huge victory. And then Jonnu Smith getting thrown in. He was supposed to be the yards after the catch, the tight end screen, the slants and stuff kind of guy. And he did a great job of that in Miami last year. Nothing this year. Nothing after the catch, no tackle breaking ability. He just looks pretty zapped, and maybe some of that is usage. But that trade, what has he done relative to what Connor Hayward could have done in the same role? Like, really nothing. So you're not getting surplus value on that trade either. You look at the draft. You draft Derek Harmon in the first round. I think that's probably a good and the right decision, right? Right now, he lacks pop as a pass rusher. He's really not making any impact getting after the quarterback. And that's a problem because Hayward's not a guy who wins quickly. And if you're giving so much in the quick passing game, you would hope you could have an interior guy that could win quick, get to the quarterback. They have the shortest path to the quarterback and just kind of disrupt things. Harmon really hasn't done that, and that's what you wanted him to be, that kind of a little bit more juiced up interior rusher, but he's been good against the run, and like, that's super valuable. It should allow you to play more light personnel, but that hasn't exactly been the case for the Steelers. Still running a fair amount of base, especially against the Bears in this past week. YA Black's a great pick. Like Jack Sawyer's been pretty good for a late round value. So there are like wins throughout his resume, certainly for Omar Khan. It is not, he's over on the offseason. But then you look at drafting Caleb Johnson. That's been a totally wasted pick. Is that Mike Tomlin's fault for not playing him? Probably. But Kenneth Gainwell and Jaylen Warren haven't really allowed that to happen. And I don't love everything they do with Kenneth Gainwell. I would probably prefer those touches to go to Caleb Johnson. But they play a different role, right? Like Gainwell's going to be more the third down back that's going to catch the ball out of the backfield quite a bit more. And while he's not been the most efficient running back in the NFL, it's kind of hard to argue with a lot of that success. He's been pretty good. So you spend a surplus pick on a running back. I have no issue with that. I think the mid rounds are where you should be drafting your running backs. It's a running back that should fit your offense really well. And I actually think he does. He hasn't gotten the opportunity to show it, but I certainly think if Omar Khan, seeing how things have worked out now, he spends that pick somewhere else. You sign Aaron Rodgers. That's the best of limited options. Your back's against the wall. You're kind of in a corner in that situation, but it isn't working out the best possible case scenario. I think Rodgers has been pretty bad in recent weeks before his injury. You signed Darius Slay. If I graded that signing, I would grade it an F-. The only context to be added to that is he was cut, so he doesn't count against the comp pick formula. So get an extra draft pick relative to signing a free agent who wasn't cut from their previous team. And so like that preservation of the comp pick formula does have some pretty meaningful value. But as a player, he's been terrible. There are a lot of reasons to be concerned about the construction of this roster. I go back to the coaching a lot, as Sandra in the chat does. It's the same story year after year, always outcoached, never any adjustments consistently. Something has to change, but won't. It's so frustrating and disappointing. I'm right there with you. I'm frustrated. I'm disappointed. But there, I kind of laid out defensively, there have been adjustments this year. This defense isn't good no matter how you play it, is kind of what we're learning. It can have flashes if you can get the opposing quarterback to hold on to the ball a little bit. This pass rush can be really fierce, but it's not a consistent answer. And I feel like I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth. There are issues. There are so many issues with the way Mike Tomlin coaches and leads this team. I want the Steelers to fire Mike Tomlin. I also am growing increasingly concerned about the construction of this roster and about Omar Khan and his path out of mediocrity. Because it has been to get more veteran, to invest more, spend more draft capital on, signing DK. You spend draft capital, then you sign DK to a pretty big contract, which, as Steelers Freak says, is a bust contract. I don't know that that's totally true, because it's not like the cap's going to continue to go up. I think it's going to be an okay number. But DK is not like the guy you need him to be, where he is completely dominating the passing game and can kind of carry it on his own. How many receivers in the NFL are that type of player? I don't know, 7 to 8. There's not a ton, but DK is probably not one of them. And right now he's being paid like one of them. I think you'll see all the other receiver contracts continue to pass him, and it'll look like a less troublesome contract. But again, it is the fact that was the bet Omar Khan finally was willing to make at wide receiver. it hasn't gone as planned. It hasn't been a home run. And Khan with Andy Weidel is kind of his right-hand man, comes from Philly. I think that's a great front office in terms of evaluation, obviously, I think. I mean, they consistently have one of the best rosters in the NFL. You do wonder a little bit about Khan's evaluation potentially, given that he was like the salary cap guy for Kevin Colbert, not the boots on the ground scout guy as much. Like he's kind of the move the chess pieces around the board, not determine how valuable each piece is. Valuable, yes, in terms of contract, but like scheme fit and different things. Like his evaluation hasn't blown me away. Um, in terms of the draft and free agency and everything. There are so many intertwined problems. That's why football is such an interesting sport to talk about, because there's so many moving pieces on game day and through organizations and okay, was this the right player to draft, but he's not being used correctly? Is this, he was the wrong player to draft, but this coach is getting more out of him. But you consistently see the Steelers let go of guys and they get better in their next place. That's a coaching thing. But you're also now seeing some trades and moves that have really not worked out. So while we were super high on Omar Khan early in his tenure, feeling like, okay, this is new, this is a fresh voice, this is a different way of operating, and it is. This defense has a lot invested in it, and some of those investments happened before Omar Khan, but a lot of them have happened with Omar Khan. And even for the adjustments that Tomlin has made, it just doesn't have enough talent to get it done. And I think it's going to finish as one of the, worst defenses in the NFL, probably. It's just not a good unit. And hopefully some wholesale changes will be coming to that side of the ball and to the organization at large. But I would not hold my breath. That'll do it for the show today. Just, deep diving the Bears game, but also zooming out a little bit to how have the Steelers gotten to this place where the most expensive defense in the NFL is just pretty talent deficient. It's been a string of interesting moves, and a lot of them have gone belly up. So a lot of problems with the organization, a lot of frustration from the fan base, from myself. I don't think it's going to get a lot better against the Bills next week. For a preview of that matchup and for content leading up to that matchup, go to stillcurtain.com for, more breakdown of the Bears game and also a look ahead at the Bills game. Check out the next podcast coming up midweek on the Still Curtain podcast on Still Curtain YouTube with Tommy Jagai and Shane Kubis. Come back next Sunday after the Bills game. Myself, Mark Powell, Shane Kubis, instant reaction, breaking everything down. And then I'll be back again next Monday to deep dive the performance. So just content is going to keep flowing your direction. Make sure you're subscribed to see all of it. And you can also follow me on Blue Sky at Yourish3 for not only my Steelers stuff, but also a little bit of college football coverage as well, if that's your fancy. Till next Sunday, have a great week. Happy Thanksgiving. And as always, go Steelers.